I think my love of wolves began when I was a child by reading Jack London's Cry of the Wolf. And that really haunted me. I used to write poems about wolves and wolves howling at the moon. And then when you think about the way that wolves were first domesticated, following around the human hunters and gradually getting closer and closer, and how that has led to all our domestic dogs. It's ridiculous. You look at a chihuahua and a wolf and you think, what? This little funny little creature has the genes of a wolf. This is absurd. But it actually happens to be true. And the more people realize that their beloved dogs are actually no different genetically, or very little different from wolves, and wolves have many of the same qualities as domestic dogs. I mean, they're loyal, they're fantastic parents, they look after their cubs, they're willing to risk their lives. And then to think of the ways that they're treated, the awful, awful thought of wolves being caught in leg hold traps and lying there in days in agony, being shot, and the most recent ruling by Fish and Wildlife in some states that you can gas or poison wolves when they've got cubs in the burrow, and you can gas the burrows, if I'm right. And it's just shocking. You know, it's important to change perception in children as young as possible. And for example, a lot of the perception of wolves has been generated in young children by Little Red Riding Hood. And out there in the literature, there's an awful lot about wolves who attack people and packs of wolves hunting down people. And of course, in the United States, this image of the wolf is propagated by the hunters and by the farmers. And so it has to be counteracted by a lot of media on the other side. I've met wolves that have been brought up from pups. They can't be released in the wild, and I've been to wolf sanctuaries. And when you actually meet a wolf and look into their eyes, it's an extraordinary feeling. And so I think it's maybe there should be more stories, more books, more photographs, more first-hand accounts. And then, of course, farmers' perceptions will be changed if there is a real way of compensating them if their livestock is killed. But at the same time, the farmers shouldn't move their livestock into areas close to wolf dens. So it's a whole mixture. One has to really think, in all different ways. So, but I'm sure it can be done. And I think our Jane Goodall Institute Roots and Shoots program, which is encouraging young people to reconnect with the environment and as much as possible get them to actually see a real wolf. And of course, most schools aren't near to a wolf sanctuary, and most schools can't afford to take their pupils out into a national park where there are wolves and spend hours waiting in the chance of seeing them. But as much as possible in that area could and should be done. If you just start the Roots and Shoots groups, and then you can help us because you can develop information, and then we can share it with the other Roots and Shoots groups, and that will spread the wolf's message around. And we need it in Europe too as well, you see, because wolves are being introduced. And the image there, I had a letter from a woman just yesterday, and she said, "Oh, I've written you some stories. I love what you do." And one of the stories was a couple going out into this beautiful wood and all the trees and everything. And then suddenly they hear the terrifying sound of a pack of wolves, and they have to quickly climb up a tree because they're so frightened and the wolves are going to eat them. And it's just perpetrating the same thing. I told her I ticked her off. another thing that I feel very strongly about is that I was taught as a child by my dog, Rusty, and he's behind me here on the shelf. And he's the one who really taught me that we're part of the animal kingdom, not separated from it, and that we're not alone in having personalities, minds, and above all, emotions, and feeling pain. And these wolves are probably even more sentient, or perhaps not more than dogs, but at least as much as. And so they're capable of mental as well as physical suffering. The cubs will suffer if one or both parents are killed. The parents will suffer if the cubs are killed. And they suffer as much as your beloved dog. I think that's a very important point to get across. They're thinking, feeling, they're sentient beings. They feel fear, despair, and pain, but they can also feel joy and compassion and altruism.